The crazy story of the greedy goblin in Yu-Gi-Oh! Long ago, there was a wealthy goblin who was the absolute embodiment of greed, and he ruthlessly taxed even the poorest of people. Until one day, there was an economic crash that affected the goblin greatly, and after doing the math to see how much money he had left, he realized he was completely and utterly broke. Even though the goblin was now broke, he was still incredibly greedy and now looked for some dark ways to make money. So he took to stealing items from stores to resell them. In addition to stealing directly from stores, the goblin would also wait for supply carts to walk by the road, where he would steal items from the back of them as well. Now eventually, this would land the goblin in royal prison, where he served a lengthy sentence. When released from the royal prison, the goblin looked for new ways to make money that wouldn't land him back in prison, so he started begging. And to help bolster his chances of making money, he purchased a pot of duality. You see, the pot of duality is actually a very interesting item, because it has two sides. The front of the pot resembling the pot of benevolence, an item that's meant to bring good fortune, and that's why the goblin was using it. He thought people would give him more money if he had this item. However, the back of the pot resembles the pot of greed, which shows the goblin's evil intentions hiding beneath the surface, so it's a cool symbolism. Now, at some point, the goblin's pot of duality would break, revealing it to be a fake, and when he attempted to return it to the store, they didn't take it. And that's when the goblin realized that this was actually a pretty good way to make money. He could make fake pots and attempt to sell them as real. This would allow him to make money in a shady way while also not stealing, which could land him back in prison. So that's exactly what the goblin did. He started manufacturing fake pots of greed to sell to the wealthy aristocrats. But this did not go well, as his fakes were terrible and broke just like the one he bought. And that's when this aristocrat told him that if he didn't bring him an authentic pot of greed, he would regret it. So the goblin took the pots to a merchant, hoping he could repair them. Even though he didn't have any money, he was hoping like he would take pity on him. But the goblin messed up big time, because this merchant was the same one he stole from long ago. So the merchant kicked him out, angrily throwing all his spare change at him and breaking his pots even further. Now at this point, the goblin would skip town, hoping to not endure the wrath of that aristocrat that he ripped off, and started working as a groundskeeper for a wealthy family. Now this was a terrible job for the goblin because he had extreme allergies. Allergies that would cause his eyes to be swollen when cutting the grass, forcing him to not notice the serpent waiting in the grass. Now, strangely enough, the goblin and this serpent would actually end up joining the circus together, where their whole act was the serpent would just attack the goblin for people to laugh at. And if this isn't rock bottom, I don't know what is. And the goblin must have felt that way too, because after this, he started his first honest working job working at the dark factory of mass production, creating Moki Mokis. And it appeared that the goblin was finally on track to having a decent normal life, not corrupted by greed. That was until one day working at the factory, the goblin noticed a pot of greed in the factory's vault. And our story ends with the goblin selling it for some extra cash, doomed to continue this terrible fate as long as he stays this greedy.